Welcome to Power Principles. My name is Peter Mueller and I've designed this video series to provide you with some valuable lessons for life. The Power Principle 1 I named Time is more valuable than money. In part 5 today we are covering the subject of procrastination. You can view these videos by simply going to YouTube and typing in Peter Mueller Power Principles, or even better, you subscribe to our YouTube channel and then you can see all the videos we have posted there, and you are going to be notified when we have anything new. In our previous versions on part 1 to 4, we covered various different aspects of time management. In part 1, we talked about general strategies and tactics of time management, and we introduced the concept of the 4 quadrants of time management to you. Quadrant 1 we call the crisis quadrant. Quadrant number 2 we call the achievement quadrant. Quadrant number 3 we call the devil's corner, and quadrant 4 we call the waste quadrant. For more information regarding the quadrants, you can go to the video part 1 and part 2 and you will learn a lot more detail about it. In part 2 we covered the quadrant 3 cleanup, which essentially is talking about all the not important and urgent distractions of the day, which suck up a lot of our capacity on how to eliminate these kind of activities. In part 3, we covered the information management and our digital footprint. Since most of our communication and daily activities are somehow done with our cell phone, tablet, computer, TV, all kinds of electronics, we cover how we manage the sharing of our information, in general our information management, from a hardware point of view, software point of view, and also data transfer, storage and organization. In part 4 then we covered the quadrant 2 management, basically the principle of setting goals, on how to set goals and how to manage our goals. Today in part 5 we talk about procrastination. I call procrastination the silent killer. Procrastination is the kryptonite for success, I call it. Now, procrastinators, what are they doing? Number 1, we have to understand when we procrastinate, we are taking a deliberate decision to postpone any kind of activity of something important, instead of that doing a lesser important task. So we are essentially postponing it. And in many cases it starts with the point that we actually do not take decisions. This is a general pattern of procrastinators. They generally postpone. They are not very decisive, they don't decide, and they don't initiate any kind of actions, and they don't follow through. They have also trouble to focus on an activity and to maintain and keep the focus. At work and at home, they are butterflying over the various projects. They never stay with anything pretty long. And they actually thrive on the distractions, essentially on quadrant 3, as we have learned in the previous segments. And in organizations, they try to escape accountability, and in many cases, they simply wait and hope that the issues go away. And here is the top 10 activities of procrastinators. In our days, we all know it. It is the TV with watching movies, binge watching Netflix and so forth. Number 2, and for many people it's number 1, with the cell phone, social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat and so forth. All of these activities, unless they are an integral part of our job description and we are working in social media marketing, but for all the other cases it is a distraction and to a large degree a waste of time. Number 3, downloading videos, music apps, and creating digital collections and so forth. Number 4, reading some not important email with non-specific information and sharing it and distributing it with other people. I call them illusions of productivity. Number 5, web surfing. Google, God and the world, I call it. We work on a subject matter and then we get distracted and we go and dig deeper into the last corner of Google to find some interesting stuff, so to speak. And when we work on some project, very often also we have the tendency to not finishing the research phase of the project. We do research more and hoping with some more information we can get to better decisions. And number 7, excessive eating, drinking, and drug use. Everything in excess is not good, as we know, and these are escape activities we often use as a reason for not going to the important things. Computer gaming is also another way of distraction where we go away from the focus and the activities of really important tasks. Or for the obsessive compulsive among us, recognizing the desk the third and the fourth time and so forth. Or just calling some friends or going to the gym. Now, the procrastinators, they have a certain type of self-talk to them. And in many cases, for them, the world is at fault. And there are some underlying fundamental principles. The number 1 is the excuse, today is not the right day to do something. Next Monday, I'm going to start the important thing and go through. I cannot start anything on Friday. This is totally ridiculous. And in the middle of the week, I have some other stuff to do. Another familiar pattern with procrastinator is they ask themselves the question, why me, when the boss asks them to do something? Somebody else could do it, or is it really important? The procrastinator actually questions the validity of the tasks the boss drops on them. And since they don't want to like it, they postpone it and hope it goes away. Another reason for the procrastinator not even to start activities is when they know they cannot finish it on the same day. So they cannot get instant gratification, closure on a project. And then they postpone it and say, I cannot finish anyway today, so why now starting? This is something half, I don't do that, I wait for the right day to come. And by the way, the right day will never come. And another familiar pattern is more information is better and makes it easier for me to make better decisions before we can go into any kind of actions. Those people are always asking for more information, but they actually hide behind the fact that they don't want to take a decision because they know when a decision is being taken, some action will follow. So these are the 4 basic patterns of the procrastinator, and the familiar ones, they are always looking for a good starting point. Next Monday, the 1st of the month, the 1st of the year, or whatever kind of specific date they use. It is everywhere, but not now. Now, in our time management matrix, where you are very familiar with it, it is essentially the procrastinator, while he or she is procrastinating, is spending time in quadrant 3 and quadrant 4. And they do it excessively there. Where they don't go, where they are not, is in quadrant 1 and 2. Quadrant 2, as we know, these are the important but not important matters, like filing for your taxes. And then when a deadline looms, the quadrant 2s, they become quadrant 1s at one time, is a deep crisis. But procrastinators sometimes even don't follow on crisis. Their crisis monster doesn't wake them up. and then they make out of a snowball a whole avalanche of problems for themselves. Now, basically, the psychological aspects of procrastination are the following. There are some emotional and psychological roots to procrastination. Some of the origins of procrastination we can see in fear, in stress, in memories, doubts, self-doubts, perceived pressure, and it has to do with the underlying values and beliefs of the individual. And the four basic procrastination patterns, psychologically, the most common one is the fear procrastination. It is essentially the fear of failure or fear of success. But in most cases, it is fear of failure. When they approach a certain project, procrastinators very often make projections of all possible negative outcomes, and they choose the worst of the possible outcomes to justify their reason not even to start the activity. So the various kinds of fear are the biggest reason for procrastination in my point of view, because that fear is often also related to risk-taking, and procrastinators, they don't want to make the first step because they somehow perceive it as risky, that they would hurt themselves or they might lose something for it. The second pattern is the fun procrastination, or the instant gratification procrastination. That's always on the computer, playing the computer games and making a little bit of research, these distractions we have. The reason is, when we follow these small little distractions, even when we follow them and do them, number one, we have a kind of an illusion of productivity. We have achieved something and we have satisfied our instant gratification module in the brain. Again, the illusion of productivity. But the most important thing is, by doing it, we never see any risk in it for any negative consequences. In fact, most of those activities following these distractions, they don't have negative consequences immediately when we look at it from a factual point of view, but actually the negative consequence is that the important stuff is not getting done. And the third pattern is simply the lack of sense of urgency. There is a group of procrastinators, they simply always overestimate what they can do in a given time period. And secondly, they totally underestimate how much time it takes actually to complete a certain task. And this misconception with time is very often an underlying reason for procrastination. And the fourth pattern is the perfectionist procrastination. The procrastinator looks at a project and he or she wouldn't start unless they have all resources at hand and they have a very clear understanding of the perfect outcome with no flaws to it, and they are convinced that they have all the resources and skills to it to complete it in a perfect way. If there is any little doubt or any insecurity, they will not start the project. Now, talking about procrastination and the brain. First of all, we have to be aware that procrastination, that is something what we do deliberately. It is a conscious decision to postpone something until later, with the understanding that we do something else that is not important or less important. However, the procrastinator, the experienced procrastinator, doesn't have that sense, because procrastination becomes an automated subconscious pattern of thinking, avoiding the longer term, more difficult projects and jumping for the instant gratification. Now, how does it work psychologically? Actually, the symptoms the chronic procrastinator demonstrates, they have with some of psychological disorders a few things in common. For people, for example, who suffer from executive dysfunction. I will explain a little bit later what this means. They share some symptoms with that. ADD, or a fraction of those which have ADHD, share some symptoms with chronic procrastinators. Also, anxiety disorders, depression, and sleep disorders are common symptoms for procrastinators, and perceived stress. Now, we talked about executive dysfunction. What does it mean? What is it? It is a psychological disorder which deals with the following situation. We all are faced every day with a situation where we get through our eyes, ears, through our senses. We are faced with the situation and we know we want to change and create a future result. Now, our brain then, based on our values, beliefs, goals, and skill sets, makes up a kind of a plan on how to achieve the new situation by identifying, planning, and executing certain tasks, so that we go from the old situation to the new situation, that we have certain actions after we plan for it and have a result. And actually, the procrastinator has actually then the problem. The person with executive dysfunction has problems first identifying properly the situation they are dealing with, or they have some planning deficiencies, or they have just the deficiency of following through. Now, when we go to executive dysfunction, which is a broader description of possible mental deficiencies, and the ADD cluster of symptoms is totally incorporated. Everybody who has ADD has to some degree executive dysfunction. And ADD is typically characterized by distractibility, impulsivity, and restlessness. So everybody who has ADD has also executive dysfunction, but not everybody who has executive dysfunction has ADD, because there is certain symptomatic in executive dysfunction which is not overlapping with ADD. And the problem areas in executive dysfunction have a lot to do with initiating tasks, to actually doing the first step, which is for procrastinators a well-known problem. And impulse inhibition is also a problem for the procrastinator, because they follow their impulses and avoid the more important underlying problems they should be dealing with. All in all, the emotional price the procrastinator actually pays for is resulting in anxiety, depression, resentment, despair, and in diminished self-confidence, which is the end of the song, so to speak. And here are some 7 tools and techniques for the procrastinator. Number 1, watch this video 5 times and take copious notes, which is a problem for the procrastinator, I know that. Step 1 was this. Step 2, make a 1-week time log. And how to make a time log you have learned in part 1, 2, 3, and 4. So make a time log and identify your procrastination patterns. Procrastination is a thinking pattern which results in a certain action pattern. And then analyze the patterns at home and at work, what your escape activities actually are. And then eliminate specific triggers for these activities at home and at work. A very simple thing, if the TV would be the culprit of all your procrastination, shut off the TV, or at least not more than 45 minutes a day or something like that. These elimination of these triggers are the so-called quick fixes. Number 3, make a commitment to pick your top 3 procrastination patterns. And then number 4, develop a clear plan of action on how to deal with them. What to do, what not to do. It starts always with what not to do, but then you have to fill the void with what you do instead. if you don't have a substitution task for it, you will automatically fall back into your procrastination rituals. Number 5, develop an inspiring set of quadrant 2 goals. If you don't have enough long-term objectives and goals at home, for your social, private life, and for your business life, then you cannot fill quadrant 2. Then you have the problem, you know what not to do to go out of quadrant 3, but you don't know what to do instead. So building long-term inspiring goals is a cornerstone, that you know what to do after you know what not to do. Step number 7, start meditation. Meditation will help you to increase your focus, because maintaining focus is one of the problems of the procrastinator. Secondly, it will help you to reach a better emotional balance. And third, it will help you to control your impulses a little better. So this was part number 5 of Power Principle 1, Procrastination. In part 6, which is the last part of our Power Principle 1 video series, I will talk about the 10 magic tools to life management or time management. On that note, have a lot of fun and see you on one of my other videos.